In April 2018, a county medical examiner in Tennessee signed a death certificate for a missing 19-month-old boy, listing the cause of death as natural. Weeks later, that classification was amended to homicide. Years after that, it changed again, this time to undetermined. 3 official determinations, 3 different conclusions about how a child died. The case of Joe Clyde Daniels became a stark example of how death investigations can evolve, especially when there is no body. Joe Clyde Daniels lived with his parents in Dixon County, Tennessee. Public records indicate he had developmental disabilities and was nonverbal. On April 4, 2018, his father, Joseph Daniels, reported him missing, stating he had put the child to bed the night before and discovered him gone the next morning. Law enforcement launched an extensive search involving local agencies and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Despite ground searches and water recovery efforts, no remains were found. Within days, Joseph Daniels was arrested and charged with criminal homicide. According to court filings and later trial testimony, investigators stated that he gave inconsistent accounts and ultimately made statements indicating he had killed his son and disposed of the body. The defense later challenged the reliability and interpretation of those statements. Because Joe Clyde's body was never recovered, no autopsy could be performed. There were no documented injuries, no toxicology, and no forensic pathology findings. It was under those circumstances that the initial death certificate listed the cause as natural. Officials later clarified that without physical evidence, a specific traumatic or violent mechanism could not be medically established at that time. As the criminal case progressed, that classification became controversial. Prosecutors are pursuing a homicide charge, yet the official medical record reflected a natural cause. Weeks later, the medical examiner amended the death certificate, changing the manner of death to homicide. Public reporting and court proceedings indicate that this revision aligned the medical record with investigative findings, including the father's alleged admissions and circumstantial evidence presented to a grand jury. However, the evidentiary reality remained unchanged. No remains had been recovered. The revised classification was not based on new autopsy findings, but on investigative information. Defense attorneys argued that without a body, the state could not medically prove how the child died. They pointed to the initial natural classification as evidence of uncertainty. In 2022, during legal proceedings tied to the homicide prosecution, the medical examiner amended the death certificate again. This time, the manner of death was changed to undetermined. Court records reflect that the revision acknowledged a fundamental limitation. Without remains and without autopsy findings, a specific cause and manner of death could not be determined to a reasonable degree of medical certainty. In forensic practice, undetermined does not mean that nothing occurred. It means the available evidence is insufficient to classify the death as natural, accidental, homicide, or suicide from a strictly medical standpoint. The criminal trial of Joseph Daniels proceeded despite that classification. Prosecutors relied on alleged admissions, witness testimony, and circumstantial evidence. The defense maintained that the case lacked physical proof. In September 2022, a jury convicted Joseph Daniels of criminal homicide. He was sentenced to life in prison. The final legal determination was homicide. The final medical classification remains undetermined. There were no public court findings establishing misconduct by the medical examiner. Instead, the record reflects evolving interpretations shaped by the absence of a body and the intersection between medical and legal standards. Medical examiners must assign both a cause of death to physiological reason and a manner of death natural, accident, homicide, suicide, or undetermined. In this case, the absence of remains meant no physiological mechanism could be documented. The manner classification shifted as investigative and legal context changed. The case illustrates several documented factors that can influence death determinations: reliance on investigative information when medical evidence is limited, judicial scrutiny of evidentiary standards, and the inherent challenges of no-body homicide prosecutions. It also highlights the tension between medical certainty and legal proof. A jury may find guilt beyond a reasonable doubt based on statements and circumstantial evidence. A medical examiner, by contrast, must base conclusions on demonstrable physical findings. For Joe Clyde Daniels' family, The lack of recovered remains has meant the absence of traditional closure. For the courts, the conviction resolved the criminal charge. For the official medical record, uncertainty remains. A death certificate first read natural, then homicide, then undetermined. The law reached one conclusion. The medical record reached another. And between those determinations lies a complex reality of death investigation, where the absence of evidence can be as consequential as its presence, and where official truth can change as institutions reassess what can and cannot be medically proven.